got?
Small gunshot wound to the lower left abdomen.
You've got this guy that appears to be homeless. It appears to be a robbery gone bad. It didn't sit right with me.
Have we been able to find any family on him?
No. Mike didn't have the family here, but he did have people that loved him.
But you just kill a man really for nothing.
It made it difficult developing a suspect.
The thing about it is you've gotten yourself into some
Some witnesses are fearful for retribution within their community if they testify.
You've got to have witnesses.
Which is a big thing to not have.
At this time, you're expecting the worst.
For those most affected by a homicide, the first 48 is just the beginning. This is the story of the fight for justice.
The Mobile Police Department, we came together. We were his family.
In the weeks, months, and years, first responders locate the man, shot dead.
The only person that we're truly working on behalf of is the person who's deceased. We're our victim's best advocate.
What's up, Nels?
What you got?
Small gunshot wound to the lower left abdomen. No exit wound.
Okay. What's the victim's information?
Michael Levitsky.
58-year-old Mike Levitsky served 20 years in the Air Force before he fell on hard times. He got by working odd jobs and was well-liked in the neighborhood.
He didn't really stand out as somebody that had a lot of anything. The way that he was dressed kind of suggested that he was not as fortunate, maybe homeless. So the idea was running in our head how or why this occurred.
Hey, Nettle.
Yes, ma'am.
Over here.
The unfired shell casing?
The team finds 4 .22 caliber bullets in a line, unfired.
If you only have unspent cartridges and then there's no fired ones, like what's really going on? I didn't know. When this case first started, I was in a unit for maybe a month and a half, so I was brand new. The other guys in the unit, they were experienced. I was learning on the fly.
We're used to collecting 5 cartridge casings from the scene. My experience was that the person that actually fired the shots had picked them up.
Hey, look at this.
50 feet from Mike's body,
A bottle of wine or something?
Maybe they were fighting over it or something.
then
You and Jermaine want to interview the kids in the back of the car.
Could do. Thank you.
a teenaged witness
You all right?
has agreed to talk to detectives.
What happened today?
I was walking and Mike was behind me. I heard Mike yelling get off of me. And then when I turned around, dude standing over Mike with his hands on his throat. Then dude took the stove and started walking off.
Did you see what the guy took from Mike?
He wine.
Him being shot and killed because of the wine bottle that was on the scene. For this to be a robbery, it didn't sit right with me.
Then what happened?
Mike had ran back toward him and I heard 2 gunshots. Saw Mike on the ground. He didn't get a cook.
The guy that shot Mike, who was that?
I really don't know.
Was it a black guy or white guy?
That guy.
Remember what he was wearing?
The red constructor shit.
So we know that this is going to be our person, the person that's in the red.
We were obviously moving in the right direction. But what's going on here? What is the motive behind this thing happening? It appears to be a robbery gone bad. When you look at the victim, you've got this guy that appears to be homeless. I just don't understand it right now.
Three hours in, a neighbor provides another lead.
Apparently, Mike stays in an apartment with a woman named Bob.
The witness was sure that if anybody knew who did this to Mr. Levitsky, that Bob would know.
Yeah, I know Bob. When I was patrolling this area, I actually talked to her a lot. Anytime I ride through there, Bop is sitting right there in front of her door, talking. She going to wave to me, and I would always go over there and just sit around and just talk. Hopefully she'll talk to us.
I think a lot of times when people see police, they don't necessarily trust us.
Yes, I do.
But as soon as she saw Detective Rogers, she lit up. So I was like, yeah, we're good, we're good.
What I like to do is take you to police headquarters.
Okay. I think that it was because of Detective Rogers, or her knowing him, that friendship that they had, that she was more willing to talk.
That's crazy, man. Homeless man ain't have nothing but a bottle of wine. People will rob you for anything.
Four hours in,
We needed to get anything, any information that would kind of help us understand why this would have occurred.
Did Michael ever stay there with you?
I told him I could take you to my house and give you something to eat. And when I fed him, he just kept coming back. We just wanted a friend.
You can hear it in Bop's voice. Mike meant a lot to her. Bop really cared for Mike.
The man had fell in love with me. And today was the first time I ever really actually knew that I really cared about this man.
How did this happen?
Mike told me earlier that a black guy pulled a gun on him, right? He said I owed him $20.
She told us he had asked for money that was owed to him by Bob, money to buy crack.
I don't know nothing about him owing nobody no $20.
Did Mike indicate to you who that was?
No.
Did he say where the guy pulled out a gun out on him at?
He said when he was coming from the store, he went and got a pack of cigarettes and a beer and then a paint of wine.
So that happens.
So we drink that paint of wine. And he said I got enough to get me another paint of wine. He went to the store. In 10 minutes, he would have been back. And it was too low.
Who you think would do this to him?
I don't know. God knows I don't know.
Bob was very emotional about Mike. Really took a toll on her.
I think that she knew the person that was responsible. It is frustrating when you've got a person that isn't giving you information, but I think that Bob was afraid because if this could happen to Mr. Levitsky, it could happen to me. At that point, we had a vague description of a person. We had a specific piece of clothing that he was wearing, but we didn't have a name. You've got to have witnesses come and they've got to participate in the process.
Have we been able to find any family on him?
No.
We reached out to the Air Force looking for any next of kin information to notify them of his past, and we didn't get anything.
It's situations like this that make you more thankful that you've got your family.
It literally just made me that much more determined to solve his case.
Then,
So at this point, this message come in. One of my friends over at the apartments, she said she had some information. Me being around veteran homicide detectives and I get a message, I get excited. I guess I'm earning my keep.
Having Detective Rogers on his case, receiving information, really paid off. And I think a lot of that is attributed to his style of patrolling, forging those relationships.
7 hours in,
I wanted to the police so bad, but they don't scared for my life.
I was a friend of mine, a real good friend. We were just like brothers. Yeah. He was just all the way around good fella.
Mike worked at the glass shop at the hardware store, cleaning up and stuff like that. And he worked for me sometime, plumbing or carpenter. That was my friend. He was a good person.
Mike was quiet. You had to open a conversation up with him for him to start talking to you.
He was smart. I mean, he was smart in books. He was smart. But, you know, it's just like drugs just took over his life. I was surprised when they said that somebody killed him. Why would they kill Mike? You know, that person never did do nothing to nobody, hurt nobody, and he'll help you if he could.
It was uncalled for. But he just kill a man for nothing.
Seven hours into the investigation,
This witness was definitely afraid. She has to deal with living in this area where the shooting occurred.
We're investigating homicide. You can tell me what you know about it.
You just got to simply put your own consideration to the side and just do what's right.
the witness says she was leaving Bob's apartment when she ran into a neighbor.
Just like my dad. I'm like, dad, what the you mean, you know?
What else does he tell you?
He would tell me like, bitch, red shine. Bitch, red shine.
Who is Red?
Yeah.
What's Aaron's last name?
Jefferson.
What was Aaron wearing today?
He had a red top. Tight top before the drink.
When you hear two people say the same thing, you know it's accurate.
Remember what he was wearing?
A red constructor shirt.
Why would Aaron want to do that to Mike?
Like, why would Aaron got a cold ass hood for you?
Have you pulled him up yet?
Aaron Johnson is 22 years old and has worked as a welder. He has one conviction for burglary.
What shocked me was I knew Aaron. Aaron used to live pretty much in the building right next to me when I was a kid. Aaron was a quiet kid, wasn't raised like that. And you look up and you're investigating him because he just committed a murder.
He's got an assortment of guns. He's holding a handgun, could be possibly a .22 caliber handgun.
The witness gave us his Facebook profile, and the first picture we see is that .22 caliber pistol. We knew that we were in the right place because .22 caliber casings were there on the scene. He's a suspect, and now we've got to find him.
Detective Rogers. Hey. Who?
Word has spread, and once again, Rogers' connections in the neighborhood pay off.
We get information that Aaron is actually at a relative's house. All right, thank you. Aaron is pretty much on the run. He can't run forever. At this time, you're expecting the worst. You're going to pick up a murder suspect.
Hey, 3 of us go to the front. All right. Jermaine.
Mobile Police. Open the door, please. It's the Mobile Police Department. Open the door. Ma'am, we're looking for Aaron. Hey, got somebody on the right side of the house. Hey, where's Aaron at, sweetie? His grandmother answered the door. Okay, he's right there. He needs to come outside right now.
I don't know where Aaron's at.
Aaron's right there. Inside that room.
It became more or less a standoff.
He needs to come out your house right now.
The longer he's in there, the more time he has to think and the ability to access weapons.
He just moved to that side of it.
We believe this person's most likely capable of, and that was murder. Who says that they won't do it again by taking one of us out?
The escalation for us now is really at a point of real crisis.
Aaron, you need to come out with your hands up. Aaron.
We're conducting an investigation, and we do need to verify whether or not he's here. Step on out for us.
He's been gone with his girlfriend, somebody.
You can see somebody. And so the next question was, well, who's inside with you?
You're going to this house not knowing if you're going to make it back home to see your family, even though you're working for someone else's.
I'm gonna go left. Clear. It's a wall. There's an open door.
Aaron, it's Mobile Police Department. We need you to come out.
And what did you do?
Aaron looks up at me and says, Jermaine, he remembered me, and it's been years since. That was the toughest part. I would never think that you would be this guy. I didn't see him as this killer.
I'm gonna go knock out the search warrant.
All right.
But at this point, you're our suspect. I'm gonna hold you accountable to what you did.
10 hours since Mike's shooting death.
A witness identified Aaron Johnson as the person that's responsible for killing Michael Levitsky. At this particular point in the investigation, we need Aaron Johnson's statement.
We want to understand what happened and what led to it.
Did you know Mike at all? He's the guy that was killed.
No, sir.
Talking to Aaron, he was saying he didn't know why he was down here. He didn't know why he was being targeted by the police. He didn't do anything wrong.
I'm interested in what happened to Mike. Tell me what happened.
A white man come speed walking. He going that way like he headed to the store. He like, ooh, God, he got that money.
According to Aaron, it was another subject that was involved.
He grabbed my gun and took out my hand, the white dude.
The man who Aaron is blaming for Mike's murder is the same one who told the witness Aaron was the shooter.
Tell me what this red shine.
Who is Red?
Yeah.
So, did you hear any shots being fired?
No.
Aaron, it didn't happen that way.
Yes, it did.
There was actually a witness that saw you there, okay? So we're here for an explanation.
After we started using certain names of witnesses and kind of showing our hand, I was hopeful that he was gonna realize the best way out of this was just to be truthful.
I'm telling you, you acting like you want me to say I killed the man.
Aaron, the only thing that I want you to say is what actually happened.
I'm telling you what actually happened to me. Y'all telling me it's bull.
That's exactly what it is.
Me being a month and a half inside of homicide, and actually just sit second chair to Julius while he interviewed Aaron, to me it was pretty much a work of art.
What was going on that caused you to shoot Michael?
Man, I ain't shoot that man. Oh my God.
So how many shots were fired?
2.
2 shots were fired? Let me ask you this question. There were unfired shell casings throughout the scene. How did that happen?
Because my gun didn't operate right. Top of it popped off.
Aaron told the things that only that person who was the shooter, who was in contact with our victim, would know.
Where's that gun at right now?
I told my little brother to get rid of it.
So where is it?
I don't know.
Have you ever heard of physical evidence? We are tearing up your grandmother's house as we speak. The thing about it is you've gotten yourself into some and the only way that would help you get out of it is that you face it and say, hey, this is what I did. I messed up. I'm sorry. Let's move on.
Turn around, face up.
I can say one or two things when I go into the courtroom. I can say that Aaron admitted that it was wrong and you're remorseful for it. Or I can say Aaron is a liar.
To get a guy like Aaron or get any murderer to get emotional like that, you know, it takes a hell of an interviewer.
When my life over.
I think that he was crying simply because he realized that he had been caught.
What happened?
A robbery, no murder.
So talk to me about it.
I ain't kill that man. Pull that trigger on that man.
Aaron maintains the second man killed Mike.
He pulled that trigger on that man. That's all I want to say.
Okay.
"29 hours in, Aaron Johnson is charged with robbery and murder.
But we didn't have DNA and fingerprints, stuff that we really need to prove a case. Without any other information, the way that we solve these cases is if we've got at least one witness.
It's a big deal knowing that there was another subject that was involved.
It made it difficult developing Aaron Johnson as a suspect and still having those unanswered questions. So we executed a search warrant at his house.
We believe that this is the gun that was used to kill Mike.
You can see in one of the pant pockets here, there's a small caliber fired shell casing. The most incriminating evidence was the fact that those shell casings were in his pocket.
It was a jackpot when we can find casings that Aaron had at his residence.
I felt 100% positive that Aaron Johnson was the person that killed Mr. Levitsky.
But the second suspect is still out on the streets.
47 hours into the investigation.
Hello? Have you been in contact with him?
We talked to a lot of suspects' family members. So now we know that our second suspect is at this house.
All right, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
We got the location. Detective Nuss with the Mobile Police Department is out with you right now. We'll step in and speak with him if that's okay.
The worst case would be that he not come out or would want to fight, because who wants to be picked up on a murder case? Thank God that he came out and cooperated.
as the first 48 runs out.
Our second suspect cannot come in and say, I wasn't there, because now we have several witnesses. This is his opportunity to tell us what happened.
I'm going to slide over him.
The man coming out the apartment.
The second suspect says he confronted Mike earlier that day.
That's why my girl says it because Bob owed me money. I said, I know if I gave her my $20, I know she smoked some crack, she smoked it with you.
Mr. Levitsky's girlfriend, Bob, had borrowed some money from the second suspect to potentially buy crack. Bob never paid the subject back the money, and so he felt like Mr. Levitsky was responsible for that debt.
Well, he was like, well, I ain't giving you nothing. That has something to do with you and Bob.
So this whole thing started in motion because of our second suspect.
Essentially demanding money that was owed to him.
And I get on the side of the building, I seen the man Mike and Aaron arguing, and I left. 10 minutes later, the lady came to Bob on Mike with this.
I appreciate the effort, but that's not it.
It's hard to get anyone to admit being involved in a murder.
It happened because of some of your actions.
I didn't shoot nobody.
Did you suggest that Aaron robbed Mike?
No, I did not suggest that.
I think that you've got it in your head, if you can lie to these detectives, that it all go away.
No, it don't go away.
It don't, and it only gets worse. So talk to me about what happened.
I'm terrified for my life. These men might kill me. And yes, this man did shoot this man. And I'm scared for my life that he might hurt me.
Once you leave here, nothing that you say matters. I've got a warrant for your arrest for murder. Right now is your opportunity to talk to us about what happened and exactly how it happened.
Okay, this is how it happened. Aaron was over my house.
I was amazed that he broke down and started telling the story.
He asked me, I'm gonna tell the truth, he asked me did I want my $20 back, and I said, yeah, I want my damn $20 back.
The second suspect basically said that Aaron Johnson asked him, did he want to make a quick lick? He knew that Mr. Levitsky had gotten paid, and so the second suspect essentially directed Aaron Johnson to Mr. Levitsky. The idea was that Mr. Levitsky was going to reach in his pocket and comply. Well, that wasn't the case. Aaron Johnson and the victim started tussling, and then the shooting occurred.
Yes, I seen Red shoot that man. He shot the man in his stomach.
And it sent chills through my body.
Get him out of here.
The second suspect obviously knew that that robbery was supposed to occur. He actually played a part in that robbery. As far as the law is concerned, he's equally responsible for the death of Mr. Levitsky.
The second suspect is also charged with murder.
I'm going down for something I didn't even do.
The homicide unit here with the Mobile Police Department, we came together. We were his family, and we were able to deliver justice for him.
Now, we turn that information over to the district attorney's office.
We were providing justice for him. And so I took that personally. I felt it was our job. Because I was so passionate about providing justice for Michael, I decided that we should try the case as a group effort. Joe was one of our newer attorneys and had not tried very many cases at all.
This was my first murder trial in the pilot seat. When you come out of law school or start trying cases, you think you're going to win everything. Law school teaches you how to argue a case to lawyers. It doesn't teach you how to argue cases to people. With this case, the defense was going to be, there were two suspects. It's all the other guy. They were pointing the finger. He did it or he did it.
It's in the defense's interest for Aaron and the second suspect to be tried separately.
They can make him into whatever monster they want, and you can always point to that person because that person's not there to defend themselves.
In fact, the law is very clear. If you have two individuals that gave statements that point the finger at each other, then you're not allowed to try them together.
We decided to go with Aaron first because we felt we had the stronger case against him and because it appeared he was the one who had pulled the trigger.
Damrich and Rich worked the next 8 months preparing for Aaron's trial.
This was not an easy case.
We always knew the defense was going to be focused on a lack of DNA, a lack of fingerprints.
A lot of the evidence in this case was circumstantial, so witnesses were important because they could help us put all the pieces of the circumstantial evidence together.
We did not have any witness that said, I saw Aaron Johnson shoot Michael Levitsky, which is a big thing to not have. We know that there was only one person who said that they viewed Aaron Johnson shoot Michael Levitsky, and that was the second suspect. The discussion would be, did we need to flip the second defendant? Sometimes a jury might not like the fact that one person is trading their seat over here for the seat up on the witness stand. And we felt that it was probably going to hurt the case more than help it.
So Damrich and Detective Nettles focus on getting others to testify.
Joe and I set out well before the trial, looking for witnesses.
We had to drive around town and find them. Like, literally go door to door.
We had a real issue in locating these witnesses because they're not stable in terms of having a home. They don't have the means, and so they kind of go with the flow of life. And if that means turning off the phone today and getting another one tomorrow, then that's what they do.
Some witnesses are fearful for retribution within their community if they testify. But the one thing that was common is they all wanted to help provide justice for Michael because they cared for him.
On the first day of trial, I've got these people that were not easy to get here. We were just hoping that they didn't run out the door. We tried to establish some type of motive or reason why something like this would happen.
The prosecution calls Mike's girlfriend, Bob, to the stand.
Bob had an ongoing dispute about a drug debt. And so the stage is set for a robbery to occur. She did a really good job. After that, we started calling the other witnesses, started getting them up there. I had to get through all of them on that first day. The jury is leaning forward. I know that they're paying attention. And then the defense had their turn with the witnesses.
The defense did have evidence that they tried to use to discredit our witnesses. The smoking crack cocaine, going up to the store and buying a $1 jug of wine at a time.
The defense lasered in on inconsistencies that our witnesses said that they did not initially indicate to the detectives. And over again, the defense attorney asked, did you tell the detective that? Did you tell the detective that? I don't recall, I don't recall, I don't recall. And I remember I sat in the chair just thinking, what just happened? They have hurt the case far more than helped it. We did have one thing that would show that he was the person who did it.
A witness had indicated that the person that had the physical altercation with Mr. Levitsky was wearing some red item.
Remember what he was wearing?
A red constructor jacket.
The prosecution calls Detective Nettles to testify about evidence collected after Aaron's arrest.
We used video to corroborate the testimony of the witness.
There was surveillance video from the convenience store that showed Aaron Johnson in the store.
Within less than 100 yards of where this murder took place, minutes before it took place.
So you see Aaron Johnson wearing a red Bulls jersey, similar to what the witness described. And then those are the shorts that we collected that had the fired casings.
A .22 caliber shell casing in his pants pocket. And the firearms expert was able to match the fired casing from his pocket to the gun that killed Michael Levitsky.
Ballistics reports were able to prove that the bullet that was found in the victim's body matched the gun that was found in Aaron Johnson's possession.
That was the knockout blow, in my opinion.
After 3 days of trial, the prosecution rests. The defense calls no witnesses.
But it wasn't over yet, because we had one final curveball.
Felony murder is where you have to prove that a killing ensued during a robbery. We argued he should be found guilty of felony murder, but the judge said no.
We have to show that this death was not an accident, it was not incidental, it's an intentional murder, and only an intentional murder. So, Mr. Damrich, closing arguments. Thank you, Judge. Ladies and gentlemen, can you start? In the moment, I didn't even have time to think about it. I had to show that Aaron Johnson intended to kill Michael Levitsky. So you can see Exhibit 2, you can see Exhibit 3, you can see Exhibit 6, and you can see the bullets kind of in a line right there near the body. If the bullets are all in a line, and that's the way they appeared at the scene, those bullets are gonna fly out like this. He attempts to fire the gun, he clears the round, flies out. He attempts to fire the gun, he clears the round, flies out of the side. He attempts to fire the gun again, he clears, he finds out, and then he finally fires that fatal shot. You wouldn't fire that gun 4 times if you didn't intend to kill somebody. That's what I told the jury.
I'm proud of Joe for what he did.
Now it's the defense's turn at closing.
They try to create doubt in the jury's mind by saying the other suspect was present. How do you know this person didn't commit the crime?
This jury had poker faces on. They were hard to get a read on.
Deliberation takes just 1 hour.
So then the jury walks in. It is hard to describe the sweaty palm nature of the moments before. And I see the 4-person stand up. We find the defendant guilty. All right. But the case isn't over. That's 1 defendant down, 1 defendant to go, and now you gotta prosecute the other half of this thing. Now it was time for somebody else to step in.
Like Joe Damrich, 88 Coy Morgan is new to the job.
This is the first murder trial that I prepped for trial. There was butterflies. Mike would still be alive today if it was not for the second defendant. He was the one that had the motive.
Oftentimes when you have no eyewitnesses, motive becomes very important.
The second defendant participated in a robbery. A death resulted, and that's why he was charged with felony murder.
But we faced the risk of justice not being served. The defense is going to say, this is not the man who pulled the trigger. They've already convicted the guy who's responsible for this. So why are we here trying this other person? We had a hard decision to make whether or not we should offer a plea deal.
I laid out to the defense attorney, look, this is the offer, plea this by Friday or the offer is going to be taken off the table. Shortly after, I got a call back he would accept the plea deal.
There wasn't anybody sitting on our side of the courtroom for our victim here. It was really just us.
Mike didn't have the family here, but he did have people that loved him.
Make a left here.
7 years after Mike's death.
I just ain't never liked coming up here since I have. I used to come all the way to that corner there. To that corner, as far as I would come. And I'd turn around and go back the other way. He was laying right there. These for Mike. These for my good buddy Mike. Mike was a good guy. I prayed about that dude.
The first mistake was so small that nobody noticed it. Not the detectives. Not the crime scene technicians. Not the reporters crowding behind yellow police tape. Not even the man who believed he had committed the perfect crime. It was nothing more than the faint impression of a single fingerprint, hidden beneath a thin layer of dust on the inside frame of a broken kitchen window. It was incomplete, smudged, barely visible beneath dried rainwater and years of neglect. In 1984, investigators collected it because procedure demanded they collect everything. They photographed it, lifted it, sealed it inside an evidence envelope. Then they placed it into a storage box where it would remain untouched for 40 years. Everyone believed it would never matter. 40 years later, it became the only reason the truth survived. Everything began on the morning of October 17, 1984. Ash Creek, Nebraska, was still asleep when the first emergency call reached dispatch. A farmer driving toward his fields noticed the front door of a small white farmhouse hanging open. The porch light was still burning, even though the sun had already climbed above the horizon. Newspapers lay untouched beside the steps. The family dog wandered in circles across the yard, whining but refusing to leave the porch. The farmer called out. No answer. He stepped inside. 3 seconds later, he ran back outside. His hands were shaking so violently he could barely hold the telephone. Deputies arrived within minutes. The silence inside the farmhouse felt wrong. Not peaceful. Not empty. Wrong. Coffee still sat inside a mug on the kitchen table. A radio played quietly in the living room. The television displayed static. One chair had been knocked onto its side. Near the hallway, investigators found 29-year-old Emily Carter. She had suffered severe head injuries. There were signs of a violent struggle. Broken glass covered the floor. One curtain had been torn almost completely from the wall. Yet nothing appeared stolen. Her purse remained inside the house. Cash sat untouched inside a ceramic bowl near the entrance. Jewelry remained on her hands. There was no obvious motive. The house looked frozen in time, as though violence had entered for only a few terrifying minutes before disappearing into the Nebraska darkness. Emily's husband, Daniel Carter, was nowhere to be found. Neither was their 8-year-old son, Jacob. For several terrifying hours, investigators believed they were searching for 2 additional victims. Roadblocks surrounded Ash Creek. Helicopters searched nearby farmland. Neighbors joined deputies walking through cornfields stretching for miles. Then, shortly after noon, Daniel appeared. Alone. He emerged from an abandoned gravel road nearly 6 miles away. His clothes were dirty. His hands were scratched. His face carried fresh bruises. He claimed someone had attacked the family during the night. He said 2 masked men forced him into a pickup truck. He said they drove him into the countryside before leaving him tied near an irrigation ditch. He claimed he escaped shortly after sunrise. But one question immediately troubled investigators. Where was Jacob? Daniel had no answer. He insisted the attackers separated them. He insisted he never saw his son again. The search expanded. Hundreds of volunteers combed fields. Divers searched irrigation canals. Dogs followed scent trails that disappeared along old county roads. The entire state watched the mystery unfold through evening news broadcasts. Nebraska family tragedy. Missing boy. Rural community in shock. Every headline created more fear. Every passing hour reduced hope. Then, 3 days later, Jacob was found. Alive. Cold. Terrified. Hidden beneath an abandoned grain storage shed almost 12 miles from the farmhouse. He was dehydrated but physically unharmed. Investigators expected the child to solve the mystery. Instead, he deepened it. Jacob remembered waking during the night after hearing his parents arguing. He remembered loud voices, breaking glass, his mother's scream. Then footsteps. Heavy footsteps. He remembered someone carrying him outside. He remembered the smell of diesel fuel. He remembered seeing headlights through tears. But when investigators asked who carried him, he simply whispered one sentence. It wasn't a stranger. Those 3 words changed the investigation. Yet Jacob could not explain what they meant. He was frightened. Confused. His memories came in fragments. Pieces without order. Images without names. Investigators considered every possibility. Family friend. Neighbor. Relative. Someone Emily knew. Someone Daniel trusted. The suspect list grew. Then stalled. Forensic technicians processed every inch of the farmhouse. Hundreds of fingerprints. Dozens of shoe impressions. Hair fibers. Blood samples. Broken glass. Cigarette ash near the back porch. Everything entered evidence. Nothing clearly identified the killer. Among the collected material was one almost invisible fingerprint recovered from the inside frame of the broken kitchen window. The print was incomplete. Only a partial ridge pattern remained. The FBI compared it against available records. No match. The evidence envelope was sealed. The fingerprint disappeared into storage. Months passed. Then years. Rumors replaced facts. Some believed a drifter committed the murder. Others suspected someone inside the community. Some quietly questioned Daniel Carter. His injuries had always seemed strangely minor. His timeline contained gaps. But suspicion is not proof. Without evidence, investigators could do nothing. The case slowly became another Nebraska cold case. Emily Carter's photograph remained inside detective offices long after newspapers stopped printing her story. Jacob grew older carrying memories that never fully returned. Daniel rebuilt his life. Ash Creek continued forward. New families moved into town. Children grew into adults. The farmhouse was abandoned. Windows shattered. Paint peeled from the walls. Nature slowly reclaimed the property. Only the evidence room remained unchanged. Cardboard boxes. Yellowing reports. Cassette-recorded interviews. Photographs fading at the edges. And inside one envelope, a fingerprint waiting for a future nobody in 1984 could imagine. Every detective who inherited the case noticed the same thing. Nothing fit perfectly. Daniel's statement changed in small ways over the years. Not dramatic lies. Tiny adjustments. Minutes became hours. Locations shifted. Descriptions evolved. Enough to raise questions. Never enough to file charges. The fingerprint became little more than an inventory number. Evidence Item 47C. Partial latent print. Kitchen window frame. Unknown source. Every few years someone submitted it again. Every few years the answer remained identical. No identification. No suspect. No justice. By the early 2020s, the case had nearly reached its 40th anniversary. Most original investigators had retired. Some had died. The evidence box looked older than the detectives now assigned to review it. Cold case investigator Rebecca Sloan opened the file with one simple instruction. Review every unsolved homicide involving preserved forensic evidence. She spent weeks reading thousands of pages. Then she reached Emily Carter's file. One photograph stopped her. The broken kitchen window. She looked at the evidence log. Then looked again. Partial fingerprint. Excellent preservation. Never destroyed. Never contaminated. She leaned back in her chair. 40 years earlier, that fingerprint had been too small to identify anyone. Now, technology had changed. And somewhere inside that faded ridge pattern, someone's name was still waiting. The evidence box had not been opened in almost 4 decades. Dust drifted through the cold archive room as Detective Rebecca Sloan lifted the faded lid. Inside were brittle photographs, yellowing witness statements, cassette tapes, and a single sealed envelope marked in black ink. Evidence 47C. Partial latent print. 40 years earlier, it had been catalogued, photographed, and forgotten. Now it was the first thing she reached for. She held the envelope beneath the fluorescent light. The tape had turned brittle with age. The paper smelled of cardboard and old ink. Somewhere inside was the tiny fragment every detective before her had failed to unlock. Rebecca didn't believe in miracles. She believed in patience. Technology had changed. Evidence had not. She carried the envelope to the forensic laboratory. No reporters knew. No one in Ash Creek knew. The town continued living exactly as it had the day before, unaware that a forgotten fingerprint was about to wake a sleeping mystery. The laboratory was silent except for the hum of scanners. Technicians digitized the partial print at a resolution unimaginable in 1984. Every ridge became sharper. Every broken line became visible. Software reconstructed areas that earlier generations could barely distinguish. Hours passed. Then another day. Rebecca watched through the glass as analysts compared microscopic ridge endings. No one celebrated. Not yet. Old evidence often promised everything and delivered nothing. Outside, autumn rain washed across the windows. Inside, 40 years collapsed into a single moment. A technician stopped typing. He leaned closer to the monitor. Another analyst walked over. Neither spoke. Rebecca stepped inside. What did you find? The technician inhaled slowly. Not a full identification. Her shoulders sank. But he enlarged a section of the scan. There are enough characteristics to connect this print to another piece of evidence. Rebecca frowned. What other evidence? A print collected 6 years later. Silence filled the room. Not another suspect. Not another crime. Another fingerprint. From another unsolved case. Rebecca stared at the screen. 2 different investigations. 2 different years. The same unknown hand. Suddenly, Emily Carter's murder was no longer isolated. Somewhere in Nebraska, another family had been living with unanswered questions. Rebecca requested the second file immediately. It arrived the following morning. Another rural home. Another unexplained disappearance. Another investigation that quietly disappeared into storage. There was no obvious connection. Different counties. Different victims. Different investigators. Only one thing overlapped. The hidden fingerprint. The realization sent a chill through the entire task force. If the same unidentified person appeared in 2 unsolved investigations years apart, then someone had escaped notice for decades. Maps covered the conference room walls. Red strings connected towns. Old newspaper clippings filled whiteboards. Investigators reconstructed forgotten timelines that no one had looked at together before. Patterns slowly emerged. Highways. County roads. Small farming communities. Every location sat within a corridor stretching across central Nebraska. Not random. Not impossible. Intentional. Rebecca refused to jump to conclusions. Patterns could deceive. Evidence could mislead. She ordered every archived file within that corridor reviewed again. Boxes filled the office. Dust settled over desks. Coffee cups multiplied. Days became nights. The team read thousands of pages written by detectives who had long since retired. Every report represented another voice from the past. One interview caught Rebecca's attention. A gas station attendant remembered seeing an unfamiliar pickup truck several hours before Emily disappeared. The statement had been dismissed because the description was too vague. No license plate. No driver's name. Only one unusual detail. The truck carried a faded emblem of a hawk painted on the driver's door. Rebecca searched every other file. 3 days later, another detective called from across the room. I found it. Another witness. Another county. Another year. Another faded pickup with the same painted hawk. The room fell silent. Coincidence suddenly looked much less convincing. The investigation accelerated. Retired deputies were interviewed. Former witnesses were located. Some had forgotten. Others remembered details they never realized mattered. A retired school bus driver described seeing the same pickup parked beside an abandoned grain elevator weeks before another disappearance. An elderly mechanic remembered repairing a truck with an unusual hand-painted bird decades earlier. Small memories. Tiny fragments. Worthless by themselves. Powerful together. Rebecca understood something every cold case detective eventually learns. Time destroys memories. But sometimes, time also separates noise from truth. As more evidence surfaced, Ash Creek began hearing whispers. People noticed unfamiliar police vehicles. Former investigators returned to town. Old newspaper reporters started making phone calls again. Questions spread faster than answers. What had they found? Why reopen the Carter file now? Was someone finally close to solving it? No official statement came. Rebecca wanted facts before headlines. She knew hope could be dangerous, especially for families who had waited 40 years. Jacob Carter, now a middle-aged man, received a phone call asking if he would meet investigators again. He agreed. The interview room felt strangely familiar. He had sat in one like it as a frightened child. Now he entered carrying decades of unanswered questions. Rebecca placed old photographs on the table. Jacob studied them quietly. Then his eyes stopped on one image. The broken kitchen window. I've dreamed about this, he whispered. Rebecca looked up. What do you remember? He closed his eyes. Long silence. Then words emerged slowly. I remember hearing metal. What kind of metal? A gate. Maybe. What else? A bell. Rebecca leaned forward. A bell? Jacob nodded. It wasn't loud. He hesitated. It sounded like wind moving through iron. The room became perfectly still. No report from 1984 mentioned a bell. No investigator had ever asked. Sometimes memories did not disappear. Sometimes they waited for the right question. Rebecca circled the note. Wind through iron. It wasn't much. But 40 years earlier, neither had the fingerprint. And yet here they were, standing on the edge of a mystery that refused to stay buried. The sound of the iron bell refused to leave Rebecca Sloane's mind. It was too specific. Too ordinary. Too strange to be invented. People rarely remembered conversations after 40 years. They forgot faces, dates, names. But unusual sounds. Those had a way of surviving, especially sounds connected to fear. Rebecca spread an old county map across the conference table. Every abandoned church. Every grain elevator. Every ranch. Every farm with livestock. Anything that might have used a suspended iron bell. The circles multiplied. Dozens of possible locations. Too many. She crossed out the impossible ones first. New construction. Buildings demolished years ago. Properties that had never existed in 1984. The list shrank. 32 locations. Then 20. Then 11. One by one, investigators drove each route using copies of the original road maps from the 1980s. Modern highways had changed everything. Roads had disappeared. Bridges had been rebuilt. Entire intersections no longer existed. They wanted to see the landscape the way it looked the night Emily Carter died. The farther they drove from the cities, the quieter Nebraska became. Cornfields stretched toward the horizon. Telephone poles marched through empty land. Old barns leaned under decades of wind. Silence ruled everything. It was easy to understand how someone could vanish out there. Easy to understand how a single mistake could remain hidden for years. At the 7th location, nothing matched. At the 8th, investigators found only ruins. At the 9th, they discovered something unexpected. An abandoned livestock auction. The buildings were collapsing. Windows shattered. Rust covered every metal surface. Near the entrance stood a weathered iron frame. No bell. Only an empty hook. Rebecca stared at it. If there was a bell, one deputy nodded. It could have been removed years ago. She walked farther into the property. Every step stirred dust that had not moved in decades. The wind slipped through broken wooden beams. A hollow whistle echoed inside the empty structure. Not the sound Jacob described. Close. But not enough. They left. 2 days later, another retired deputy returned Rebecca's phone call. His voice sounded uncertain. I remember a ranch. What kind of ranch? Horses. Where? North of Miller Creek. Why does it matter? They had an old railroad bell hanging beside the front gate. Rebecca froze. A railroad bell? Heavy cast iron. Did it move in the wind? Every storm. She was already reaching for her keys. The ranch had been abandoned for nearly 20 years. The driveway had almost disappeared beneath weeds. Trees surrounded the property. Nature had swallowed most of the buildings. Only the gate remained standing. Rust covered the hinges. The wooden fence had collapsed. Then the wind shifted. A deep metallic tone rolled across the empty fields. Slow. Heavy. Lonely. Jacob's words echoed inside Rebecca's memory. Wind moving through iron. Every detective stopped walking. Nobody spoke. The bell rang again. Not loud. Not sharp. A low, hollow sound carried across the prairie. Exactly the kind of sound a frightened child might remember forever. Rebecca looked toward the farmhouse. Something felt wrong. Not dangerous. Familiar. As though the place had been waiting. The property records revealed the ranch had changed owners several times. Most records were ordinary. One stood out. For nearly 12 years during the late 1970s and early 1980s, the ranch had been leased by a transportation company that no longer existed. Midwest Agricultural Freight. Rebecca searched the company name. Very little remained. Bankruptcy. Closed offices. Missing payroll records. Destroyed archives. Almost forgotten. Almost. One surviving document listed vehicle maintenance reports. Among them, a faded note describing a fleet pickup. Customized paint. Driver-requested emblem. Hawk insignia on left door. Rebecca felt the room grow smaller. The hawk. The forgotten witness. The mysterious pickup. The fingerprint. Separate clues were beginning to orbit the same place. Still, coincidence was not evidence. She needed more. Forensic archaeologists surveyed the abandoned ranch using ground-penetrating radar. Most of the underground images showed old fence posts, collapsed drainage pipes, animal burial pits. Then one scan revealed a rectangular disturbance behind an equipment shed. Not deep. Not recent. Artificial. Investigators marked the area. No one guessed. No one celebrated. Experience had taught them patience. The excavation began at sunrise. Each layer of soil was removed by hand. Hours passed. Nothing. Then a volunteer uncovered something wrapped in decayed canvas. It was not human remains. It was a toolbox. Locked. Rusted shut. Conservation specialists opened it later that afternoon. Inside were ordinary mechanics' tools. Receipts. A broken flashlight. An old key ring. And beneath everything else, a disposable camera sealed inside a plastic bag. The film should have been destroyed. 40 years underground should have erased every image. Yet technicians recovered several damaged frames. Most showed trucks parked around the ranch. Workers loading equipment. Routine photographs. Then came the final frame. Blurry. Poorly exposed. Taken at night. Headlights illuminated part of the farmhouse yard. Near the edge of the image stood a pickup truck. The driver's door was open. The paint was impossible to identify, but one shape remained visible. A bird. Its wings spread across the door panel. A hawk. Rebecca stared at the image without blinking. For 40 years, investigators had searched for a truck. Now they had proof it had existed. Not proof of murder. Not proof of guilt. But proof that memory had not lied. The forgotten witnesses had seen something real. The mystery was no longer drifting through rumors. It was becoming tangible, piece by piece, photograph by photograph, memory by memory. Somewhere beyond the abandoned ranch, beyond the silent fields, beyond 4 decades of unanswered questions, someone had once believed these clues would disappear forever. They hadn't, because evidence has a strange kind of patience. It waits. It survives floods, dust, fire, silence, even time itself. And now, after 40 years, it was beginning to speak. The evidence was finally beginning to speak. But after 40 years of silence, the truth did not come rushing out. It came slowly, piece by piece, like a voice trapped beneath layers of dust, waiting for someone patient enough to listen. The photograph from the abandoned ranch changed everything. Not because it solved the mystery. It did not. But because it proved something investigators had spent months trying to understand. The stories were connected. The forgotten memories. The strange vehicle. The old ranch. The iron bell. The hidden fingerprint. They were no longer isolated fragments floating through history. They were pieces of the same forgotten puzzle. And for Rebecca Sloan, that was the most dangerous moment in any investigation. The moment when a theory begins to feel like the answer. Because theories could be wrong. Evidence could not. The task force slowed down. They returned to the beginning. They reopened every report, every interview, every photograph. They wanted to know one thing. What had everyone missed? The answer was buried inside the original investigation. A single paragraph written by a detective who had retired 20 years earlier. The note was brief. Almost ignored. Possible secondary vehicle observed near property. Description ungefähr. That was it. One sentence. No follow-up. No additional interviews. No photograph. No identification. For decades, that sentence sat inside the file. A forgotten possibility. Rebecca contacted the retired detective who wrote it. His name was Thomas Vale. He was 81 years old. His memory was slower now, but when Rebecca mentioned Emily Carter's name, the silence on the phone changed. I wondered if someone would ever ask about that again, he said. Rebecca immediately wrote down the words. What do you remember? A long pause followed. Then Thomas began describing the night. He remembered arriving at the farmhouse shortly after the first deputies. He remembered the broken window, the scattered glass, the feeling that something about the scene did not match. What bothered you? Rebecca asked. Thomas answered quietly. The house looked like someone wanted us to think it was chaos. Rebecca leaned closer to the phone. Meaning? Meaning real chaos is messy. He continued. People don't leave a perfect trail of confusion. Someone had moved things around. Someone wanted the scene to tell a story. Rebecca looked toward the evidence board. What story? That strangers came in. The room became silent. For decades, investigators had considered outside attackers. Random violence. A chance encounter. But Thomas had another memory. A detail he never included in the official report. Because at the time, it seemed too uncertain. I saw tire marks. Where? Behind the property. What kind? Truck tires. Why wasn't that investigated? Thomas sighed. Because the area was full of farm vehicles. A reasonable explanation. A reasonable assumption. And sometimes reasonable assumptions are exactly what allow mysteries to survive. Rebecca thanked him. Then she called the forensic team. The original tire photographs were requested. The negatives were damaged. The images were poor. But modern enhancement revealed something unexpected. The tire pattern was unusual. Not a common farm truck. Not a standard vehicle. The same pattern appeared in another photograph. The old camera from the ranch. The pickup. The vehicle hidden in the background. The investigators compared the images. The match was not perfect, but it was close. Too close to ignore. The Hawk truck was no longer just a memory. It was a physical object connected to multiple timelines. Now they needed to know who drove it. The company records from Midwest Agricultural Freight became the next target. The problem was almost everything had vanished. The company closed decades earlier. Employees scattered. Documents were destroyed. But one investigator found something buried inside a forgotten archive. A worker compensation file. A name appeared. Evan Rourke, maintenance technician, temporary employee, 1978 to 1986. Assigned vehicle, Unit 14. A customized pickup. Hawk emblem. Rebecca stared at the page. The first real name connected to the mystery. But the name created another problem. Evan Rourke had no criminal history. No arrests. No obvious connection to Emily Carter. He had disappeared from public records in the early 1990s. No current address. No confirmed employment. No known relatives. It was as if he had stepped out of history. Investigators searched. Former co-workers were located. Most remembered him as quiet. Private. Someone who avoided attention. One former employee described him as the kind of person who could stand in a room and nobody would remember he was there. That description bothered Rebecca, because people who disappear into crowds are often the hardest to find. The team discovered that Evan had worked around Ash Creek during the same period as Emily's disappearance. He knew the roads. He knew the farms. He knew the isolated properties. But knowing an area was not enough. They needed proof. Then came the discovery that changed the direction of the investigation again. A storage unit registered under Evan Rourke's name was found outside a small Nebraska town. The unit had not been opened in 18 years. Inside were boxes of personal items. Old clothes. Tools. Books. Photographs. Nothing immediately suspicious. Until investigators found a notebook. A simple black notebook. No title. No dates on the cover. Inside were pages of handwritten observations. Weather. Road conditions. Locations. Times. At first glance, it looked like a worker's journal. Then investigators noticed the names. Not many. Only a few. But one name appeared more than once. Emily Carter. The room stopped moving. 40 years of questions. 40 years of uncertainty. And suddenly, Emily's name was sitting inside the handwriting of a man nobody had considered until now. Rebecca turned the page. The next entry was dated 3 days before Emily disappeared. It contained only one sentence. One sentence written in dark ink. One sentence that forced investigators to reconsider everything they believed. I know where the silence begins. Nobody spoke. Because they understood something terrifying. They had spent 40 years searching for the person who left behind evidence. Now they had found someone who appeared to have been watching before the mystery even began. The investigation was no longer about a forgotten fingerprint. It was about a hidden history. A history someone had worked very hard to erase. And somewhere, beyond the empty Nebraska roads, the person connected to the notebook was still out there. Still carrying secrets. Still holding the missing pieces. But the past had started opening its doors. And once a door opens, some truths cannot be forced back into the dark. The notebook changed the investigation forever. For 40 years, investigators had believed they were chasing a person who disappeared into the darkness after Emily Carter vanished. Now they were facing something different. Someone had not simply disappeared. Someone had been watching. The black notebook sat inside the evidence room beneath a clear protective cover. A simple object. A few pages of handwritten notes. Yet it carried a weight heavier than any piece of evidence investigators had ever handled. Because the notebook did not just record events. It recorded attention. Someone had been observing places, people, movements, patterns, and one name appeared again and again. Emily Carter. Rebecca Sloan read every page herself. Slowly, carefully. She refused to rush. The smallest detail could matter. The handwriting changed over time. Some entries were neat. Others were rushed. Some words were crossed out. Some sentences stopped halfway, almost as if the writer had been interrupted. Or afraid. The first pages contained ordinary information. Work schedules. Vehicle repairs. Weather conditions. Nothing unusual. Then slowly the tone changed. The notes became more personal. More focused. More unsettling. Locations appeared. Times appeared. Names appeared. Not many. But enough. Rebecca created a timeline. Every date from the notebook was compared against known events from the original investigation. The results shocked the team. Several entries matched locations where unusual incidents had occurred. A missing farm worker, an unexplained vehicle abandonment, a reported sighting that investigators never confirmed. None of those events had been connected before. Now they were looking at them together. A pattern was forming. Not a perfect pattern. Not yet. But enough to demand attention. The biggest question remained. Why had Evan Rourke written about Emily Carter? Was he involved? Was he investigating something himself? Was he a witness? Or was there another explanation nobody had considered? The investigators searched deeper into Evan's background. They found almost nothing. That was the most unusual part. Most people leave traces. Employment records. Financial records. Photographs. Friends. Family. Connections. Evan Rourke seemed to have spent his life avoiding them. He moved frequently. Changed jobs often. Never stayed anywhere long. People remembered him differently. Some described him as polite. Others described him as distant. Some said he was forgettable. That word appeared repeatedly. Forgettable. Rebecca underlined it. Because being forgettable could be a choice. A person who wants attention creates memories. A person who wants to disappear avoids them. The investigation team traveled back to the abandoned ranch. The iron bell still hung beside the gate. The wind moved through the empty fields. The same sound that had remained inside Jacob Carter's memory for 4 decades. Investigators searched the property again. This time, they were not looking for clues from a crime scene. They were looking for history. They examined old structures. They checked hidden spaces. They searched through forgotten areas where previous investigators had never looked. Behind an old wooden wall inside the equipment shed, they found something unexpected. A small metal container. Inside were photographs. Not many. Only 12. Most showed landscapes. Empty roads. Old buildings. Abandoned properties. But 3 photographs showed the Carter farmhouse. Taken before Emily disappeared. The dates shocked investigators. The first photograph was taken 2 weeks before the incident. The second was taken 5 days before. The third was taken the night Emily vanished. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Because this was no longer a question of coincidence. Someone had been there. Someone had been watching the farmhouse. The investigation moved from possibility to urgency. The team searched for Evan Rourke. Every available record was examined. Old addresses. Vehicle registrations. Employment documents. Nothing recent. Then a detective found something hidden in a forgotten database. A hospital record. A man matching Evan's description had been admitted under a different last name 6 years earlier. The record was incomplete, but the photograph attached to the file created immediate interest. The face was older. The hair was gray. The person looked different, but the eyes were the same. The team finally had a possible location. A small coastal town several states away. For the first time in decades, investigators had a direction. But Rebecca knew something. Finding someone after 40 years is not the same as finding the truth. People change. Memories change. Stories change. And sometimes the person you find is not the person you expected. The team traveled quietly. No press. No announcements. They wanted answers before the world knew they were looking. The address led them to a small house near the ocean. Nothing about it seemed unusual. A garden. A mailbox. A faded blue door. The kind of place where nobody would expect a mystery to be hiding. Rebecca stood outside for several seconds. 40 years of questions had led to this moment. She knocked. The door opened slowly. An elderly man appeared. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Rebecca said his name. Evan Rourke. The man's expression changed. Not surprise. Recognition. As if he had been expecting this day. The silence lasted longer than anyone expected. Finally, he stepped aside. How long did it take you? Rebecca felt the words hit harder than she expected. Not who are you? Not why are you here? How long did it take you? Inside the house, everything was organized. Almost too organized. Old clocks. Old newspapers. Old photographs. A life carefully preserved. Rebecca noticed something on the wall. A framed picture. A truck. A faded emblem painted on the door. The hawk. The same symbol that appeared in the old photograph. The same symbol connected to decades of unanswered questions. Rebecca looked back at Evan. You knew we would find this. Evan did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked toward the window, toward the ocean, toward years that had already passed. I knew someone eventually would. The room became quiet. Then why didn't you come forward? Evan closed his eyes. The question had followed him for decades. I was afraid. Of what? His answer came softly. That nobody would believe me. Rebecca studied him. Because sometimes the truth does not hide behind confidence. Sometimes it hides behind fear. But investigators still needed answers. They needed to know what Evan saw. What he knew. Why he watched Emily's house. Why he wrote her name. And why he waited 40 years. Evan reached into a drawer. He removed an old envelope. The paper was worn. The edges were damaged. He placed it on the table. I kept this because I thought one day someone would need it. Rebecca opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a single handwritten letter. Not from Evan. From someone else. A name appeared at the bottom. A name investigators had never seen before. And beneath it, a sentence that changed the entire case. Emily Carter was not the first person they tried to silence. The room went completely still. Because after 40 years of searching for one answer, investigators realized they might have been looking at the wrong mystery all along. The wrong mystery. Those words stayed inside Rebecca Sloane's mind long after she left Evan Rourke's house. For 40 years, everyone had searched for the person connected to Emily Carter's disappearance. The missing woman. The hidden fingerprint. The forgotten truck. The strange photographs. Every road had led investigators toward one question. Who was responsible? But the letter sitting inside the evidence bag suggested another possibility. What if Emily's disappearance was only one chapter of something much larger? What if the night in Ash Creek was not the beginning? What if it was the moment when someone finally realized the truth could no longer remain hidden? The letter was old. The handwriting was uneven. The paper had faded from years of being folded and unfolded. But one thing was clear. Someone had been afraid. Not for a day. Not for a week. For years. The first priority was determining who wrote it. The name at the bottom belonged to a woman named Clara Voss. A name that appeared nowhere in the original Carter investigation. No witness statement. No interview record. No mention in the case files. A complete stranger. Except she wasn't. Because when investigators searched deeper, they discovered Clara had worked at a small agricultural office near Ash Creek in 1984. An office that handled transportation records. The same type of records connected to Midwest Agricultural Freight. The same company that once operated the truck with the hawk emblem. The same company connected to Evan Rourke. The mystery was expanding. Rebecca returned to Nebraska. This time, she was not looking for a suspect. She was looking for a missing piece of history. The old agricultural office had been abandoned for decades. The building was barely standing. Broken windows. Dust-covered desks. Files long removed. But inside a forgotten storage room, investigators found something unexpected. A metal cabinet hidden behind old equipment. Inside were archived documents. Most were meaningless. Invoices. Receipts. Employee schedules. Then they found a folder marked Property Access Records, 1983 to 1986. The pages revealed something nobody had noticed. Several employees had access to private rural properties throughout the county, including Emily Carter's area. One name appeared repeatedly, Evan Rourke. But another name appeared beside it, a name that made investigators stop. Martin Hale. A former supervisor. A person who had never been questioned. Not once. Rebecca reviewed every original report. Martin Hale was mentioned only briefly. A company manager who confirmed Evan's employment. Nothing more. No interview. No background check. No follow-up. He had existed in the investigation as a single line of information, then disappeared. The team searched for Martin Hale. At first, there was nothing. No current address. No phone records. No recent employment. Then they discovered something strange. Unlike Evan, who seemed to disappear quietly, Martin Hale had carefully erased his past. Old properties transferred. Records sealed. Business accounts closed. A trail of missing information. Rebecca recognized the pattern. People who hide often leave behind empty spaces. And empty spaces can sometimes reveal more than documents. The investigators returned to Evan. They needed the truth. Not theories. Not assumptions. The second interview lasted hours. This time, Evan did not appear surprised. He looked tired. Like someone who had carried a heavy secret for too long. Who is Martin Hale? Rebecca asked. Evan stared at the table. He was the reason I stayed silent. The room became quiet. Rebecca waited. Evan finally spoke. Back then, everyone thought the company was just hauling equipment. Supplies. Machinery. Agricultural materials. He paused. But some things happened that didn't make sense. What things? Vehicles moving at night. Where? Places they had no reason to be. Evan explained that during his time working maintenance, he noticed unusual activity around certain rural properties. Not enough to prove anything. Just enough to make him uncomfortable. He started keeping notes. Not because he wanted to investigate. Because he wanted to remember. Because he felt something was wrong. Then Emily Carter disappeared. And suddenly the things he had written down looked different. Rebecca asked the question that mattered most. Why didn't you go to police? Evan looked away. Because I did. That answer shocked everyone. According to Evan, he contacted investigators shortly after Emily vanished. He reported the truck. The hawk symbol. The unusual movements. But when he returned for follow-up, nobody contacted him again. He assumed they dismissed him. He assumed his information meant nothing. Years later, when the case went cold, he stopped trying. But he kept the evidence. The photographs. The notes. The letter. Because he believed one day someone might finally connect everything. Rebecca checked his claim. The original case file contained a handwritten note. A short entry from 1984. Possible company employee information received. No name. No details. No investigation. A dead end. Except now it was no longer a dead end. It was a missed opportunity. 40 years earlier, someone had tried to provide information. And somehow, that information disappeared. The question became bigger. Was it an accident? Or did someone make sure nobody followed it? The investigation shifted. They began examining the original case from a new perspective. Not only the crime scene, but the investigation itself. Every decision. Every overlooked clue. Every person who had access. The deeper they looked, the stranger it became. Several reports had missing pages. Some evidence logs had unexplained gaps. Certain interviews were referenced but never included. The original investigation had holes. Large ones. And those holes created room for doubt. Room for someone to escape. Then came another discovery. A former county records clerk contacted the investigators after seeing news about the reopened case. Her name was Linda Parker. She was 76 years old. She had worked in the county archive during the 1980s. She remembered something she had never reported. A man came into the records office weeks after Emily disappeared. He requested access to property files. Not unusual. But his behavior was. He was nervous, Linda said. Did you know him? No. What did he ask for? Maps. What kind of maps? Private land access maps. Rebecca's expression changed. Did he give a reason? Linda shook her head. He said he was looking for something that belonged to him. What? Linda looked down. I never knew. The investigators asked for a description. Linda closed her eyes. 40 years later, she still remembered. Tall. Dark jacket. Calm voice. And one detail. A small hawk emblem stitched onto his coat. The same symbol. Again. The same symbol appearing in photographs. Baiklas. Memories. Documents. The investigation had spent decades chasing shadows. Now those shadows were beginning to form a shape. But there was still one unanswered question. Why Emily? Why that house? Why that night? And what did Martin Hale know? Because somewhere in the missing pages of history was the answer. And for the first time in 40 years, investigators were no longer searching blindly. They were following a trail that had been hidden, a trail that had been ignored, a trail leading back to the very beginning. The trail leading back to the beginning was finally visible. But the closer investigators came to the truth, the more they realized something terrifying. The mystery had never been lost. It had been buried. For decades, the answers had existed inside forgotten reports, abandoned records, and memories that nobody thought were important enough to follow. Now every overlooked detail was returning. Every forgotten name. Every unanswered question. Every moment when someone almost discovered the truth. Rebecca Sloan stood inside the investigation room surrounded by photographs, documents, and timelines covering the walls. The image of the Hawk emblem appeared everywhere. The truck. The jacket. The company records. The witness memories. It was no longer just a symbol. It was a connection. A signature. A mark left behind by someone who believed nobody would ever notice. But someone had noticed. 40 years later, the team began rebuilding the timeline from the first appearance of the Hawk emblem. The earliest record they found was from 1979. A company vehicle. A maintenance report. A simple note. Hawk insignia added by owner. No explanation. No additional details. The request had been approved by Martin Hale. That name appeared again. And again. Martin Hale had not been a random employee. He had been responsible for company operations. He controlled schedules, vehicle assignments, property access, information. He was the person who knew where everyone went, when they went there, and why. But knowing information was not the same as committing a crime. Rebecca repeated that to her team every day. Evidence first. Assumptions last. Because cold cases were destroyed by people who wanted answers more than truth. The investigation needed proof, not a story. They searched for Martin Hale's history. The results were unusual. His early life was well documented. His later life was almost impossible to trace. It was as if someone had carefully removed pieces of him. Investigators discovered that after 1986, Martin disappeared from Nebraska. No farewell. No public records. No obvious explanation. 1 year later, a small construction company in another state listed a manager with a similar name. Different spelling. Different address. Same birth year. Same middle initial. A possible connection. But not enough. The team needed more. Then Evan Rourke revealed something he had never told anyone. A memory from the final night before Emily vanished. He remembered seeing Martin Hale at the Carter property. Not near the road. Not passing by. Inside the property. Rebecca looked at him carefully. Why didn't you tell investigators? Evan's expression changed. Because I didn't see everything. What did you see? Enough. The word hung in the air. Enough. Enough to create suspicion. Not enough to create justice. Evan explained that he had been driving home late that night after repairing equipment at a nearby farm. He noticed a vehicle parked near the Carter house. At first, he thought it belonged to a visitor. Then he saw the person standing beside it. Martin Hale. Evan said he slowed down. He recognized the truck. The Hawk emblem. But he did not stop. He kept driving. And that decision haunted him for 40 years. Why didn't you turn around? Evan looked down. Because I thought it wasn't my business. Those words stayed with Rebecca. Because history was often shaped by moments people never realized mattered. A person who keeps driving. A person who ignores a strange detail. A person who assumes someone else will ask the right question. The investigation returned to Emily Carter's farmhouse. The property had changed over the years. But the land remembered. Using old photographs and modern scanning technology, investigators recreated the scene as it appeared in 1984. They studied entrances, paths, lines of sight, possible locations where someone could observe the home without being noticed. Then they found something strange, a small area behind a group of trees. From that position, someone could watch the farmhouse. But the farmhouse residents would never see them. The location matched one detail from Jacob Carter's memory: the headlights. The child had remembered seeing lights through the window. Not on the road. Near the trees. For decades, investigators believed Jacob's memory was confused. Now they wondered if he had remembered more accurately than anyone realized. The team searched the location. They found nothing at first. Only leaves, roots, old branches. Then one investigator discovered something beneath the soil. A small metal object, rust-covered, almost destroyed. A piece of an old vehicle emblem. A fragment shaped like a wing. The hawk. The discovery was sent for analysis. The result came back 2 days later. The metal matched the material used on vehicles from Midwest agricultural freight during the 1980s. Another connection. Another piece. But still no final answer. Because the investigation now faced its biggest challenge. Finding Martin Hale. The person at the center of the mystery had disappeared. No confirmed address. No confirmed identity. No explanation. Only traces. Investigators followed those traces across state lines. Old employment records. Property transfers. Business documents. Every discovery created another question. Then a phone call changed everything. A woman named Grace Holloway contacted the task force. She had seen reports about the reopened investigation. She said she knew Martin Hale. Not recently. Years earlier. She had worked as a receptionist for a company that purchased equipment from him. She remembered him because of one unusual habit. He always carried photographs. Rebecca asked what kind. Places. What places? Empty places. The answer made the room silent. Grace explained that Martin often talked about abandoned properties. Old buildings. Forgotten roads. He described them like memories. Like locations that mattered. Then Grace said something that immediately caught investigators' attention. He once told me something strange. What? He said people only look for what they expect to find. Rebecca wrote the sentence down. Because it sounded like more than a random comment. It sounded like a belief. A way of thinking. A warning. The investigators asked Grace if she knew where Martin went. She hesitated. Then she gave them an address. A cabin in northern Nebraska. A place Martin reportedly used years earlier. A place nobody had searched. A place hidden far from the roads. The team prepared to travel. But before leaving, Rebecca reviewed the entire case one final time. Emily Carter. The fingerprint. The notebook. The photographs. The hawk emblem. The missing records. The silent witnesses. Everything pointed toward one conclusion. Someone had spent decades trying to erase the truth. But they had made one mistake. They underestimated how long people would keep searching. And now the past was opening another door. A door leading to a forgotten cabin. A forgotten name. And possibly, the final secret hidden inside the Nebraska darkness. The cabin was hidden exactly where nobody would think to look. Far beyond the main roads. Beyond the farms. Beyond the places where ordinary people traveled. It sat alone among endless fields and thick patches of woodland. A forgotten structure slowly being consumed by time. The kind of place that disappeared from maps. The kind of place where secrets could survive. As Rebecca Sloan approached the cabin, she felt the weight of 40 years pressing against every step. Every investigator knew this feeling. The moment before a discovery. The moment when the unknown becomes something real. But experience had taught Rebecca not to expect answers. Only evidence. The cabin looked abandoned. The wooden walls were faded. The windows were covered with dirt. The roof had partially collapsed. No signs of recent activity. No movement. No sound. Only the wind. The same Nebraska wind that had carried whispers across the fields for decades. The team entered carefully. Inside, the cabin was almost perfectly preserved. A table. A chair. Old books. A broken clock hanging on the wall. Everything appeared frozen. Not like someone had lived there recently. Like someone had left suddenly. Rebecca scanned the room. The first thing she noticed was the organization. Nothing was random. Every object had a place. Every document was arranged. Every photograph was stored carefully. This was not a forgotten hiding place. It was an archive, a place where someone had been collecting memories. The investigators began documenting everything. Old newspapers, maps, handwritten notes, photographs. The walls were covered with them. At first glance, they looked meaningless. Abandoned buildings, empty roads, farms, bridges, places nobody would normally photograph. Then Rebecca saw something familiar. A farmhouse. Emily Carter's farmhouse. Another photograph. Another angle. Another moment captured before the tragedy. Her stomach tightened. Someone had been watching. But why? The question had followed the investigation for decades. Now it was standing directly in front of them. The team discovered dozens of photographs inside the cabin. Different locations. Different years. Different people. But the same pattern. Every photograph showed a place connected to an unresolved event. Not always a crime. Sometimes a disappearance. Sometimes a strange accident. Sometimes something that had simply never been explained. Rebecca studied the photographs one by one. The cabin was not just a hiding place. It was a record. A record of mysteries. The notebook found earlier suddenly made more sense. Evan Rourke had not been the only person watching. Someone else had been collecting information. Someone else had been building a timeline. The question became impossible to ignore. Was Martin Hale investigating these events? Or was he connected to them? The answer seemed closer than ever. Then an investigator found a locked wooden drawer beneath the desk. Inside was a collection of cassette tapes. Old recordings. Each one labeled with a date. No names. No descriptions. Only numbers. Rebecca requested immediate analysis. The first tape was damaged. The audio was weak. Static filled the room. Then a voice appeared. A man's voice. Calm. Controlled. Speaking about locations. Times. People. The investigators exchanged looks. Because the voice was not describing memories. It was describing observations. The second tape contained something even more disturbing. A conversation. Two people. One voice was difficult to identify. The other sounded familiar. Rebecca listened again. And again. Then she froze. She knew the voice. Not from the tapes. From the past. The voice belonged to Martin Hale. The recording date was 3 months before Emily Carter disappeared. The room became silent. After 40 years, Martin Hale was no longer just a name. He was a voice. A real person. A presence from the past. The audio quality was poor, but one sentence was clear. We need to make sure nobody asks the wrong questions. Rebecca stopped the recording. Nobody spoke. Because every investigator understood the importance of those words. They were not proof of a crime, but they revealed something else. Intent. Planning. Fear. The team continued reviewing the tapes. Some contained harmless conversations. Others mentioned locations. Names. Events. A pattern emerged. Martin Hale had been documenting people long before Emily disappeared. But the reason remained unclear. Was he protecting a secret? Was he searching for someone? Or was he responsible for creating the mysteries he recorded? The investigators needed more. They searched every corner of the cabin. Behind shelves. Under floorboards. Inside old storage containers. Near the fireplace, they discovered another hidden compartment. Inside was a folder. The folder contained documents from the 1980s. Employment records. Vehicle assignments. Property maps. And one document that immediately caught Rebecca's attention. A handwritten list. Several names. Several dates. Several locations. Emily Carter's name was there. But beneath it were other names. People who had never been connected before. People whose disappearances had been treated as unrelated. The investigation team contacted every agency involved. Slowly, a new picture formed. A series of unexplained incidents. A pattern stretching across decades. And one person appearing near the edges of several stories. Martin Hale. But then came the discovery that changed everything. At the bottom of the folder was a final page. Different handwriting. Not Martin's. Someone else had written it. Only one sentence appeared. I trusted the wrong person. Below the sentence was a name. Evan Rourke. Rebecca stared at the page. Because suddenly the story became more complicated. Evan was not only a witness. He was connected. Somehow, the man who claimed he spent 40 years hiding the truth had also been part of the hidden history. The team immediately returned to Evan. This time, the questions were different. Not about what he saw. About what he never told them. When Rebecca arrived at his house, Evan was waiting. Almost as if he knew why she had returned. You found it, he said. Rebecca looked at him. You knew about the cabin. Evan did not answer. That silence was an answer itself. You knew Martin was keeping records. Another pause. You knew about the photographs. Evan looked down. I knew some things. Some things. His expression changed. Regret. Not fear. Regret. I was trying to stop it. Rebecca stepped closer. Stop what? Evan looked toward the ocean. Toward the years he had spent carrying the secret. The truth. Whose truth? He finally looked back. The truth about why Emily disappeared. The room became silent. 40 years of questions. 40 years of searching. And now the person who had been standing closest to the mystery was finally ready to speak. But before Evan could continue, his phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number. He looked at the screen. And for the first time since investigators met him, Rebecca saw fear. Real fear. Because whoever was calling was someone Evan recognized. Someone he believed was gone forever. Someone who should not have been able to reach him. The call continued ringing. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then Evan whispered 4 words. Martin Hale is alive. Martin Hale is alive. The words changed the entire investigation. Not because investigators had never considered the possibility. They had. But theories are different from reality. For decades, Martin Hale existed only as a shadow. A name in old documents. A face in forgotten memories. A person who disappeared before anyone could ask the right questions. Everyone assumed he had vanished into the past. Now, sitting inside Evan Rourke's quiet coastal home, the impossible had become real. Someone believed to be gone was still out there. Watching. Waiting. And somehow, still connected to the case. Rebecca Sloan looked at Evan carefully. The man who had spent 40 years carrying secrets suddenly looked older than he had moments before. Not physically. Emotionally. As if hearing Martin Hale's name spoken aloud had reopened something he had spent decades trying to bury. Who was calling? Rebecca asked. Evan stared at the phone screen. The unknown number had stopped. But the damage was already done. You know who it was. Rebecca waited. I need you to say it. Evan closed his eyes. Martin. The room became silent. The investigators exchanged looks. A person who had disappeared for 40 years had just contacted a witness connected to the original mystery. The timing was impossible to ignore. But Rebecca knew better than anyone. A suspicious moment was not a conclusion. They needed facts. How could he know we were here? Evan did not answer immediately. That hesitation told Rebecca something important. He had an answer. He simply did not want to say it. Finally, he spoke. Because he always knew where to look. The sentence created more questions. What does that mean? Evan walked toward a cabinet. He opened it slowly. Inside were old notebooks. Not the black notebook found in storage. Different ones. Smaller. Older. More personal. I kept my own records. Rebecca looked at the notebooks. Why? Because after Emily disappeared, I realized something. What? People forget. He placed the notebooks on the table. Investigations end. Files close. Detectives retire. Communities move on. His voice became quieter. But someone has to remember. Rebecca opened the first notebook. Inside were dates. Names. Locations. Events. The same pattern. The same mysteries. But unlike Martin's records, Evan's notes were different. They were not observations. They were warnings. He had been trying to understand what was happening. And for decades, he had been afraid of what he might discover. Rebecca studied one page. A date from 1984. The week before Emily disappeared. A handwritten note appeared. Martin knows someone is asking questions. Rebecca looked up. You were investigating him. Evan shook his head. No. Then what? I was trying to understand why people around him kept disappearing. That changed everything. The investigation team returned to Nebraska with Evan's notebooks. The case expanded again. The original investigation focused on Emily. The new investigation focused on a larger question. Who else had been affected? A national database search began. Old missing person cases. Unsolved disappearances. Unexplained incidents. Slowly, connections appeared. Not proof. Not yet. But similarities. The same regions. The same time periods. The same strange details. A company vehicle. A forgotten property. A witness who remembered something unusual. The investigators realized something terrifying. Emily Carter may not have been the first person connected to Martin Hale. She may have been the first person whose case survived. The discovery brought renewed attention to Ash Creek. Reporters returned. Cameras appeared outside the courthouse. The headline changed. 40-year mystery takes shocking turn. The town that had lived quietly for decades suddenly found itself surrounded by questions again. Older residents remembered the fear. Younger residents wanted answers. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. Where had Martin Hale been? The answer came from an unexpected source. A property records researcher found a connection in another state. A small piece of information buried inside a land transfer. A man named Marcus Hall purchased a remote property 20 years earlier. Different name. Different location. But the same birth information. The same signature style. The same unusual handwriting pattern. Investigators compared documents. The similarities were undeniable. Martin Hale had not disappeared. He had changed. The man who vanished from Nebraska had built a new identity. A new life. A new version of himself. But he had made one mistake. He kept the past. The investigators moved quickly. They located the property. Another remote building. Another forgotten place. Another structure where nobody expected answers to exist. But this time, they were not searching blindly. They knew what they were looking for. They found photographs. Documents. Old maps. But the most important discovery was not inside the building. It was outside. Near a small storage area behind the property. Investigators found a metal box. Inside were dozens of letters. Not sent. Never delivered. Letters written by Martin Hale. Some were angry. Some were confused. Some appeared to be apologies. One letter contained a sentence that immediately caught Rebecca's attention. I thought if I controlled the story, nobody would find the truth. Rebecca read the sentence again. Then again. Because it revealed something investigators had suspected. Martin Hale understood the power of information. He knew that controlling the story meant controlling what people believed. The evidence suggested he had spent decades managing what others knew. What they remembered. What they searched for. But one question remained. Why? Why create such a complicated web? Why watch Emily Carter? Why document so many people? The answer appeared inside the final letter. A letter dated only 3 months before investigators found the cabin. The handwriting looked weaker. Older. But the message was clear. I was never afraid of being discovered. Rebecca turned the page. I was afraid of what would happen when people discovered who helped me. The investigation stopped. Because that sentence introduced a possibility nobody wanted to consider. Martin Hale was not alone. For 40 years, investigators had searched for one person. But what if the truth involved more? What if someone else had protected the secret? Someone who remained hidden. Someone who still had influence. Someone who had been watching the investigation from the beginning. The next page contained only one name. A name that made Rebecca's entire team go silent. A name from the original investigation. A name that had been there from the very first day. A name nobody had ever questioned. Because sometimes the greatest secrets are not hidden by strangers. Sometimes they are hidden in plain sight. Sometimes they are hidden in plain sight. That realization changed everything. For 40 years, investigators had searched the edges of the story. The unknown truck. The forgotten witness. The missing records. The disappearing names. They had searched the roads, the abandoned properties, the places where secrets were usually buried. But they had never looked closely enough at the people who were standing beside the investigation from the very beginning. The name written inside Martin Hale's final letter belonged to someone nobody expected. Thomas Valli, the retired detective who had first responded to Emily Carter's disappearance. The man who wrote the original report. The man who admitted decades later that something about the scene never felt right. Rebecca stared at the document for several minutes. The room was silent. Nobody wanted to say the obvious, because sometimes the most difficult truths are not the ones hidden by strangers. They are the ones hidden behind familiar faces. The investigation team immediately reviewed every piece of information connected to Thomas Vale. Not because they believed he was responsible, but because the evidence demanded questions. And questions were the foundation of every investigation. Thomas had been the first detective on the scene. He had controlled the early direction. He had decided which leads received attention. He had decided which details were considered important. And most importantly, he had been there when the case began. The team returned to the original files. Thousands of pages. Thousands of words. They searched for patterns. Something unusual. Something overlooked. Then they found it. A report from the first week of the investigation. A statement from Evan Rourke. The same statement Evan claimed he gave. The report existed, but it was incomplete. Several pages were missing. The section containing details about the Hawk truck was gone. Rebecca felt the weight of the discovery, because this was not a forgotten note. This was information that could have changed everything. She contacted Thomas Vale. He agreed to meet. The retired detective arrived slowly. Older. Tired. But not surprised. That was the first thing Rebecca noticed. He was not shocked by the questions. Almost like he had expected them. They sat across from each other in a quiet room. No cameras. No reporters. Just two people surrounded by 40 years of history. Rebecca placed the letter on the table. Thomas looked at it. His expression changed slightly. You found Martin. It was not a question. Rebecca watched him carefully. You knew he was alive? Thomas looked down. I suspected. The answer immediately changed the atmosphere. You suspected? After all these years. He paused. Yes. Rebecca leaned forward. Why didn't you tell anyone? Thomas remained silent. A silence that lasted too long. Finally, he spoke. Because I didn't know who to trust. The sentence sounded familiar. Too familiar. The same fear Evan described. The same fear that had surrounded the entire case. Rebecca studied him. Did you protect Martin Hale? Thomas looked away. No. Did you help hide evidence? Another silence. No. The answers came quickly. Almost too quickly. Rebecca continued. Then explain why information disappeared. Thomas closed his eyes. And for the first time, the old detective looked less like a suspect, and more like someone carrying a burden. I made a mistake. The room became still. What mistake? Thomas looked at the old photographs on the table. 40 years ago, I believed I was protecting the investigation. He swallowed. I thought some information was too dangerous to release. Rebecca's expression hardened. Information about what? Thomas looked at her. About who Emily trusted. That sentence changed the direction again. Because until that moment, everyone had focused on the people watching Emily. But nobody had focused on the people Emily knew. Thomas explained that during the first investigation, they discovered something unusual. Emily had been collecting documents. Not because she was investigating crime. Because she had discovered something connected to her workplace. Records. Financial information. Private transactions. Something involving Midwest agricultural freight. She had planned to report it. But before she could, she disappeared. Rebecca felt the pieces moving. Emily was not random. She was not chosen by chance. She had found something. Something someone wanted hidden. The question became, what had Emily discovered? Thomas revealed that he had found a folder inside Emily's home. A folder that was never entered into evidence. Not because he wanted to hide it, because someone took it before the evidence team arrived. Someone with access. Someone who knew exactly what they were looking for. Rebecca's voice became quiet. Who took it? Thomas stared at the floor. I never saw their face. Then how do you know? Because of what they left behind. He reached into his coat. He placed a small photograph on the table. A photograph he had kept for 40 years. Rebecca picked it up. It showed the Carter farmhouse, taken from a distance, at night. But the image was not from Martin's collection. It was from Thomas's. On the back, written in faded ink, someone arrived before us. The investigators studied the photograph. Another observer. Another person watching. Another secret. The case that had once seemed like one mystery had become a network of hidden choices. Every person had seen something. Every person had kept something. Every person believed silence was the safer option. But silence had created something worse. It allowed the truth to disappear. The investigation now focused on a new timeline. Not only the night Emily vanished, but the days before. Who knew about her discoveries? Who knew about the documents? Who had access to her information? Then another piece of evidence appeared. A digital archive of old company records revealed one final connection. Emily Carter's research had not only involved Midwest agricultural freight. It involved a private land acquisition project. A project controlled by a group of investors. One name appeared repeatedly. A name connected to several properties. Several companies. Several missing records. And one shocking detail. The project manager had signed documents using the same initials found in Martin Hale's hidden files. Rebecca looked at the screen. Because the investigation had reached the point every detective fears. The moment when the truth becomes larger than expected. The moment when the case stops being about one person and becomes about an entire system built on silence. The next morning, the team received a message. No sender. No explanación. Only an attached photograph. A recent photograph. Not from 1984. Not from the past. From now. The image showed Martin Hale standing outside a building. Alive. Watching. And beside him was another person. Someone Rebecca recognized immediately. Someone connected to the original investigation. Someone who should never have been part of the story. The 40-year mystery was no longer about finding the past. The past had found them. And it was not finished speaking. The past had found them. And it was not finished speaking. For 40 years, the mystery surrounding Emily Carter had existed as a collection of unanswered questions. A broken window. A missing woman. A frightened child. A forgotten fingerprint. A witness who remained silent. A detective who carried regret. A man who disappeared. Every piece had been separated by time. By distance. By fear. But now the pieces were finally moving together. And the picture they created was far more complicated than anyone expected. The photograph showing Martin Hale standing beside another person became the center of the investigation. It was recent. Not decades old. Not a forgotten memory. A photograph taken in the present. Proof that the past was not buried. It was alive. Rebecca Sloan studied the image repeatedly. She looked at Martin Hale first. The same face from the old records. Older. Changed. But recognizable. Then she looked at the person beside him. Thomas Valle. The retired detective. The man who had claimed he spent 40 years searching for answers. The man who had admitted hiding information. The man who said he did not know who to trust. Now he was standing beside the person connected to the mystery. The investigation room became silent. Nobody wanted to make a conclusion. Because conclusions without evidence destroy investigations. But everyone understood the significance. Something had been happening behind the scenes for decades. Something nobody had seen. Rebecca contacted Thomas immediately. No response. Again. No response. His phone went straight to voicemail. His house was empty when investigators arrived. No stragel. No signs of violence. Just absence. A familiar pattern. Someone disappearing when questions became too close. Inside Thomas's home, investigators discovered something unexpected. Not a secret room. Not hidden documents. Something much simpler. A calendar. Open on the kitchen table. Several dates marked. The next one was only 2 days away. Rebecca recognized the location written beside it. Ash Creek, the town where everything began. The investigation moved immediately, because for the first time in 40 years, all the major figures connected to the mystery were moving toward the same place. Martin Hale, Thomas Wiley, Evan Rourke, and the truth that had remained hidden between them. The abandoned Carter farmhouse still stood outside Ash Creek. Nobody had lived there for years. The walls had aged. The floors had weakened. But the place still carried the memory of that night. Rebecca arrived before sunrise. The sky was dark. The fields were covered in mist. For a moment, she understood why the original investigators had struggled. The landscape itself created secrets. Distance. Silence. Endless places where something could disappear. The team searched the property again. This time they were not looking for evidence. They were waiting. And shortly after midnight, a vehicle appeared. No headlights. No sound. It stopped near the old driveway. A figure stepped out. Rebecca watched from a hidden position. The person walked slowly toward the house. Not hiding. Not running. Almost as if they wanted to be seen. The figure stopped near the broken kitchen window. The same window where the fingerprint had been discovered decades earlier. Then the person spoke. I knew someone would come back here eventually. Rebecca stepped forward. Martin Hale. The man turned. For a moment, the entire investigation seemed to stop. 40 years. One name. One moment. Martin Hale looked older than the photographs. But his eyes were the same. Calm. Careful. Watching everything. You took a long time. Rebecca did not answer. Why did you come here? Martin looked toward the farmhouse. Because this is where the story changed. The story of Emily Carter? No. He paused. The story of everyone who lied afterward. The statement created immediate tension. Rebecca kept her distance. Tell me the truth. Martin smiled slightly. A tired expression. Not happiness. Not confidence. Something closer to exhaustion. The truth is nobody wanted the truth. He explained that Emily Carter had discovered financial records connected to a hidden network of property deals. She had found names, transactions, information that certain people wanted erased. But Martin insisted he was not the person who caused Emily's disappearance. Rebecca listened carefully. Then who did? Martin looked toward the road. The person standing beside me in that photograph. The answer was obvious. Thomas Wiley. But Rebecca needed more. Why would a detective hide the truth? Martin's expression changed. Because Thomas believed he was protecting people. Protecting who? Everyone. The explanation sounded impossible. Until Martin continued. According to him, Thomas discovered that Emily's research exposed corruption involving people with influence throughout the county. Business leaders. Officials. People who could destroy careers. Destroy reputations. Destroy lives. Thomas believed revealing everything immediately would create chaos. So he delayed. He controlled information. He waited for a safer moment. But the safer moment never came. And every year that passed made the secret heavier. Rebecca asked the question that had haunted everyone. What happened to Emily? Martin looked down. For the first time, he appeared genuinely affected. I wasn't there when it happened. A pause. But I know who was. Before Rebecca could respond, another vehicle approached. Everyone turned. Thomas Vale stepped out. The old detective looked exhausted, but determined. For decades, he had carried the weight of the case. Now there was nowhere left to hide. You shouldn't have come here, Thomas said. Martin looked at him. No. A long silence. I should have come here 40 years ago. The two men stood facing each other. Two people connected by a secret that had survived generations. Rebecca watched them carefully. Because after all the theories, all the evidence, all the forgotten clues, the truth was finally standing in front of her. Thomas spoke first. I made one mistake. Rebecca waited. I thought time would give me a chance to fix everything. His voice became weaker. But time only made the damage bigger. He admitted that he had hidden information. He admitted that he removed certain details from the investigation. Not because he wanted Emily forgotten, because he believed he was preventing something worse. But his silence allowed the mystery to survive. His silence allowed people to suffer. His silence became part of the tragedy. Then Thomas revealed the final missing piece. The reason Emily disappeared. She had discovered that someone inside the investigation was feeding information back to the people she was investigating. Someone was warning them. Someone knew every move police made. Someone knew every question being asked. And that person was never found. Until now. Rebecca looked at Martin. Then Thomas. Then the evidence board waiting back at headquarters. The fingerprint. The photographs. The notebooks. The letters. Everything finally connected. But one question remained. Who was the person who actually caused Emily Carter to vanish? The answer was hidden in one final document. A document Thomas had kept for 40 years. A document he had never shown anyone. He reached into his coat, removed an old envelope, and handed it to Rebecca. Inside was a single page. A confession. Not from Martin. Not from Thomas. From someone else. Someone whose name had appeared in the investigation from the very beginning. Someone nobody suspected. Rebecca read the final line, and the world around her seemed to stop. Because after 40 years, the mystery was finally solved. But the truth was far more shocking than anyone imagined. The person everyone was searching for had been there all along.